So in my little pocket of space-time that I'm communicating through, today is America's biggest magic ritual, the superb owl. So on this day of magic, concussions, and advertising, let's talk about real magic. So when I get bored, I pull out the Moon and Serpent Bumper Book of Magic by Alan Moore and Steve Moore. And Steve Moore passed away during the completion of this book, and Alan Moore writes a very moving piece about him at the end. So, do the man some honor and put honor on his name and read that dedication. It's very moving and beautiful. So Alan Moore, I got acquainted with Alan Moore quite a few years ago, maybe 15. I was watching some strange compilation of Illuminati clips, and this is the devil stuff, and then interspersed in between pictures of concerts and stuff, there was this like maybe 20-minute video of Alan Moore talking about magic. And I thought, that sounds like it makes a lot of sense. It doesn't sound demonic at all. Let's investigate. And you should watch that video, like Alan Moore on magic. It's on YouTube. Go watch it. It's awesome because he talks about how magic really is art. If we trace back the etymology of the word, it's the art. That's what the word magic means. And that a grimoire is a book of spells, but it's really a book of grammar. To spell is to cast a spell, all that cool stuff. And what really hit me was when he talked about that advertisers have taken over magic. And instead of trying to wake people up, it's trying to put them to sleep and to get them to repeat the same banal words and, look at the same banal images while we're all just, passing 30 minutes waiting to die. So, stop waiting to die. Learn to reclaim magic from the advertisers and the powers that be and all that. And so that's why I read this book. I've read other books by Alan Moore, The Killing Joke, V for Vendetta, The Watchmen. Promethea is something I'm going to review separately. It's very close to my heart because it deals with the divine feminine, which is Christianity, for the most part, rejects, subverts, or kind of cages the divine feminine. And I think that's what's missing from the world. So, let's bring it back, but, let's not reboot Ms. Marvel 8 million times. I believe there's a version of divine femininity that doesn't hurt or offend anybody or put anyone else down, but that's for another day. So this is called a bumper book because you may not be as old as I am. I was given bumper books as a kid because I was very bookish and had ADD and autism and all that stuff. And so, here, shut up. So a bumper book is full of puzzles, comics, games, little stories. And so this book is like that. It is not for children. There are boobies in this book. So, if you're offended by the sight of a woman's beautiful figure revealed, then this book isn't for you. But it's definitely worth reading. So there are different sections of this book. There's activities, there's little comics, there's a story that runs throughout. And then all of it is really kind of very clearly and beautifully describing the Western traditions of magic, how to get started, the history of magic. Alan Moore is a master of words. He's a magician, and, words are his medium. Words are his little laser beams that are shooting out to try and light up your mind and get you to wake up and stop, put down the phone, stop consuming the slop and create a new universe within yourself. That's really what it's all about. So, there's a section on things to do on a rainy day, like build an altar or use tarot cards or summon a spirit. I personally have an altar. It's more just like a focus of my will. It doesn't really look witchy or anything. It's just stuff that I like. So none of this stuff has to be demonic or evil or scary. It's just like a beautiful tradition. If you're a person who lives in the West, you owe it to yourself to understand the Western traditions of magic and not, believe in it, but maybe you should check it out. One of the other sections of this book that I really liked was the lives of the great enchanters. So there's like little comics of people throughout history who have advanced the cause or enlarged the knowledge of magic. Because part of what magic is, to my understanding, all of this is to my understanding. I don't have a teacher or a guru. I'm just out here on my own. But in my mind, it's about going into the unknown and bringing back treasures, that you can use to create art, to change consciousness. Art is using signs and symbols to change the consciousness of yourself or someone else. And so the lives of the great enchanters is pretty interesting. A lot of the people in these stories were Christians who were in positions of high power. And, like John Dee, I think, came up with the Enochian language, and Francis Bacon and Paracelsus and Blavatsky. All of these people, William Burroughs is included. So I've done further reading on some of those people, and it's very fascinating. This is a great starting off point if you want to really get started with magic or understanding what it is, and, using this as a jumping off point to delve deeper into the sections that you like. So this book is, there's also a section on a man named Alexander who started kind of like a phony baloney scammy cult. And if you listen to Alan Moore, he talks about the fact that he worships this snake called Glycan. And the story of the origin of that religion, I think he's trying to make a point here that it's really not about whether things are true or not, or if there's a source. The source is unknown, always. The source is the unknown, mysterious connection between us and all that stuff. So I think he's making a point about other people's religion. The famous saying, what is mythology but other people's religion? My stories in my Bible are true, but yours are just made up nonsense. Even though a lot of the stories are very much the same. So anyway, but I wanted to speak specifically about the art in this book. It's beautiful. A lot of the there's a lot of signs and symbols and beautiful artwork and cartoons and different styles, but it's mainly Art Nouveau, which is something I really like. And I'm just going to read a little bit of the warning in the beginning of the book because it's a good one. It says, even people who claim to have some success with magic, it says, even with this first step, a serious warning should be raised. Those who have taken it and claim success in entering into a more productive and active relationship with consciousness as a result call themselves shamans, sorcerers, or magicians. Yet in taking a first step through that imaginary door, they've trespassed past the agreed limits of the rational world that has little choice but to regard them as deluded fanaticists or frauds or actual lunatics. It must be noted that an entry into magic is most probably not going to be an entry into greater popularity or social standing. It may even, make people hate you. So if you think this is the path to power and riches and fame and glory, it's not really that, but you got to get some kind of temptation to bring people in the door. But if you look at the lives of the great enchanters, yes, they were dabbling in dark things, and it twisted their minds. So one should beware considering the sources that you're getting your knowledge from. If you go through these things with an open heart and a clear consciousness, and you don't want to get anything in particular from it, it's in my personal experience that not wanting to get something out of it produces a greater result than wanting to force something out of it, because we never really get anything through force. Like she who controls nothing controls everything. And so, there you go. So one of the major sections of the book is about Kabbalah, the Kabbalistic tree of life, and tarot, and how all of that is kind of intertwined mysteriously. If you trace back just about anything from computer circuits to where did the tarot cards come from, it is lost in the mists of time. Who really knows what's going on here? But Kabbalah is really the foundation of every single mystery school, every tradition of magic. Kabbalistic magic, I believe, can be good or bad. You know, it's kind of a vaguely formed thing. I would not consider myself a Kabbalistic magician. I practice something outside of ritualistic magic. I'm more of a theorist and studier of these things than a practicer. I can't really explain how I do it. You got to find your own way to do it, and this book is kind of showing you how. However, a lot of the stuff presented here with the tarot and the Kabbalah is taken from Aleister Crowley and his Book of Thoth, and also the same material is found in Promethea. So, you know, if you're familiar with that kind of stuff, you'll find familiar stuff here. You know, I've had people, I was trying to talk to this dude one time, and I thought we were interested in the same things, and he was like reading Isis Unveiled because, you know, he wanted to unveil Isis. He wanted to fulfill all those love poems of the Sumerians or whatever. And so I said, "Oh, you're reading Isis Unveiled? Oh, I just finished the Book of Thoth by Crowley." And he's like, "Oh, Crowley's so wicked." You know, and this guy thought he knew the ways of magic. He's like, "I'm a magical being," but yet he was like so threatened by the idea of Crowley, even though Blavatsky and Crowley knew each other and were in the same circles. So like, this is the same fertile ground. I thought we were trying to like connect, and it just ended up like alienating him from me. Thank the maker, thank source. But, you know, it's like Crowley was a pervert. He was a bad man, but he also ventured into the unknown through the avenues of his back door. And he brought things back, things that were useful. You know, he used his own body and his, you know, sexual energy to come into heightened awareness and to retrieve this knowledge from the unknown. And it doesn't mean that the knowledge he retrieved is bad. It just means it should be put into context of who brought it to you. And, you know, reading the lives of famous people and, you know, how they became into their power is very interesting and illustrating for those that want to delve into such topics. But for me, okay, so this part is meaningful to me. On the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, it's kind of like tiny back up here. There's a missing Sephira, I don't know how to say the word, this missing sphere here. And that is supposed to be the mysterious, invisible sphere. And those that enter into this sphere, because this is a journey up the Tree of Life, right? But there's no path here. And that path is called the abyss. And this concept is covered in Promethea. And when I was going through my very dark, dark night of the soul, and, you know, in the middle of my spiritual journey, I did realize that I was in the abyss. And it says, so this is what the bumper book of magic has to say about this invisible sphere. From a human perspective, the abyss is a devastating spiritual wilderness where one is reputedly abandoned even by one's own higher self or soul, and which even most experienced magicians regard as so dangerous that it is effectively unpassable. A destination only countenanced by the vain or rashly overconfident, allegedly inhabited by almost Lovecraftian entities or by the world-shredding demon of dispersal, Trozon. It is this sphere's translation as knowledge that no doubt provides the greatest lure, with knowledge seen almost as a substance which, unlike wisdom or understanding, exists by itself without a human observer or participant. So to me, maybe I didn't read it well, it sounds like gobbledygook to you, but when you're on a magical journey, you have to know your good side and your bad side, the black mirror, the white mirror. You have to do your shadow work, whatever. I am rashly overconfident, very overconfident. And so, you know, I didn't really choose to dive into the abyss. I kind of was like standing on the edge of it in my life and like looking down and going, yeah, I guess it's time. And so I jumped in. I barely made it out. This isn't saying like, follow me into the abyss or I achieved something great. Where's my crown? No crown. You know, I believe Kanye jumped into the abyss and he has not made it out. And if you want to know what the demon of dispersal looks like, it's actually like the cold reptilian look in the eyes of your loved ones as they say things that you could never believe. as like love seeps away from your life and everyone turns their back on you one by one. That is what the demon of dispersal looks like, in my opinion. So, but finding about this in Promethea really helped me in my journey. You know, I had fun in the abyss, but it was also very difficult. So, you know, you have good days and bad days, whether you're in heaven or whether you're in the abyss. It's always just trying, it's about observation and trying to find the path out, you know. In Promethea, they talk about how it's like falling endlessly. And, you know, yes, I know what it's like to fall endlessly, to watch everything slip away. You know, I mean, people who die, you know, this is what happens. Piece by piece, you lose your faculties, your abilities, and it just drains away. I would say, we all are facing our ultimate end, and those who face it sooner than others and do it on purpose to themselves a little bit kind of have more freedom than others. Like people who have been through war zones and learned to integrate and, you know, transform that energy and that knowledge can get great skills, or it can destroy you. That's kind of like how it works. It's either going to destroy you or it's going to make you stronger than you ever thought. And so, you know, in closing, this is what he says. In magic, as in art, the purity of the intent that is invested in a work seems directly proportional to the results and the rewards accruing from it. Magic or art that is not committed to the point of utter selflessness can never be expected to yield anything approaching its ultimate bounty. So you have to fling yourself into the void without hope of ever making it out. Or, you know, if you're interested in the deeper paths of magic or what magic really is, you have to dive in with this clear window pane. You're the window pane through which the light's like passing through. You know, I would never recommend anyone to wish for something specifically. I don't have, like, I'm going to live in a mansion and meet the man of my dreams. That's all just BS. Really what you should want, if you're like wanting to deal in magic, is the highest for everybody. The rule number one should be, if it does not uplift and support all life, it's evil. And you shouldn't want anything. You should just want to become aware of where your highest good resides. For me, that's just the simplest way of putting it. You know, I have an altar, but I don't do ritual, ceremonial magic. It's more like in the moment kind of thing. But I have to say, like, Alan Moore is one of the greatest living magicians. And if you're interested in it at all, you should really buy this book. It's beautiful. Oh yes, this image right here, it is not by the author, but this image I find compelling. There is something to looking at all the pictures and letting the imagery wash over you and soak into your brain. You know, a lot of this book, the pages have magical symbols and other things, the color, perfume. This is all just to invoke these deeper thoughts, these deeper spirits. So, you know, get excited. Get into magic. You know, the magic that is practiced by the world out there is a twisted form of magic, where it's kind of preying on your death drive and your fear and desire. Everything can kind of be boiled down to fear and desire. The Buddha does this because this is fear and this is desire. Don't come here. And the truth is always like in between those two things and not having fear about those things. So, you know, it's all part of one thing. It's not evil here and bad there. It's about the tensions and the energies in life. You know, knowledge apart from human observation or experience is the blade, you know, the blade that cuts the dividing line between what's here and what's there, I guess. Anyway, so 10 out of 10, would recommend. Read all of Alan Moore's works, watch his videos. He's like a very grumpy old man. You know, he's trying to bring about the apocalypse. Let's do it. Let's raise Promethea and get back to our magical roots. And, you know, let's just go do it. Bye.